So good evening, folks. Thank you for your patience. My name is Zena Cooper from the Bristol Dodos Cricket Club. I'm the co-founder of the club, and I'm also the main organiser of this series. I have to send a huge apology from David Sid Lawrence. Sadly, he had a family emergency, so he hasn't been able to join us this evening. So my sincerest apologies for that. He did pop in to give us an interview earlier, but then had to dash off again for family stuff. So sorry about that. A massive welcome to all of you. Thanks for taking the time to join us for the final in the Time to Declare series. Before I hand over to our speaker, I'd like to set the tone for the room for the evening. So the Bristol Dodos, and I sincerely hope that this talk can be part of our game's journey towards a reparative justice. At the start of all of our games, we take a knee and a minute's silence to reflect and acknowledge the colonial roots of our game, and in turn, think about the strange fruit that has been born from such a tree. In that small gesture, we hope to heal the game and in turn to heal ourselves. It would be a folly to believe that discrimination belongs only to our past. It was our recently departed Roy Hackett, and now ancestor, who warned me over a decade ago that racial injustices are not solved. He explained how it ebbs and flows in society, how it latches to fear and uncertainty, and how we can but equip ourselves and those that we love to choose knowledge, truth and wisdom as an armoury against such a foe. So in that spirit, I implore all of us to reflect a moment, put your ego to one side, hold fast to your humanity and your curiosity to hear someone else's story, but those voices seldom heard. Our game, cricket, is rich in history. It is the only game that thinks and plays in centuries. Every ball is recorded, every ball is making history. If we choose only to comprehend our game through wins and victories, our game is impoverished and somewhat stunted. So this evening, we may uncover some hard truths, some challenging emotions, and that's okay. Remember, as cricketers, we all know well that the spirit of the game is more precious than the winning of the game. It's in that spirit we have a duty to heal from our past atrocities through learning, through acknowledgement, and through active reconciliation for justice. I'm here to introduce Roger Griffith, a member of the British Empire. He's been an incredible inspirational force in Bristol and beyond. As a writer, a social entrepreneur, lecturer and activist, Roger has worked fearlessly and devotedly to making Bristol a better city as a diversity trainer and champion for over 30 years. Working on many community projects, he's leading and inspiring the lives of many. His time at UWE Bristol, he's been central to the aims of decolonising the curriculum. So, without further ado, Roger Griffiths, thank you.
So, thank you for coming tonight, and pleasure to be here. I'm going to don my cricket outfit for supporting the West Indies, was going to be a theme of my talk today. And it's great to kind of just expose these key issues. For those that are not familiar with cricket, and there's one or two, there will be some explanations, not about the game, but about the context, if we like, as well. So a little bit about me, as Zena just said, and thank you to the team, everybody here, and at this esteemed ground. Great to see this international cricket ground that's here. I'm the author of this book, My American Odyssey from the White House. You might have heard of me from Medina Radio, where I was a chair and broadcaster there, and I teach at Bristol University. which I'm quite proud of because I've scored out any qualifications. I grew up about 5 miles, I'd say, outside Lance Weston. London boy, but moved there as a young boy. I was schooled there, and as I was just talking about, we kind of knew about the environment, even though we didn't know what it was, because we could taste it in the air. We had the smelting works and the factories that belched that toxic stuff out, the marines that were there, and the acid rain that used to come down. So we were fully aware of that before we were aware about things like the environment. We could kind of taste it in the air. Now I'm in consultancy, Creative Connect. Talk a little more about that later. Passionate about the arts and its ability to change people's lives. It's changed mine, and I work primarily in social activities and partnerships as well. So I was all the MBE in 2019, and I've got just been given an honorary doctorate by you. You have to take those questions because Empire does run through me like a stick of rock. So feel free to ask those questions that we've got to come. So the subject of my talk today will be we'll talk about as a social historian. I'm going to talk about from the beginning, talk about what's known as the Windrush generation, empire and environment, cricket and me. We're going to talk about the environment again a little bit more, and some other cricketing discussions are going forward. So what I'm going to do, because I've actually covered a lot of this in preparing for this, I'd actually had written on this before. Zena very kindly asked me to come, and they still seem as relevant today, some of my words. But I have written a fresh piece, which hasn't been aired before. So I'll share that with you. So it'll be a mixture of talk from me, my slides, and some reading as well, and then getting some Q&A and questions. So, part one. Let me give you some cricketing context for those that are familiar with the game, but also why, even though I'm born in here, very proud Black British person, but being that Black British still means that I'm still a very proud West Indian. Here's a bit about why. It's called Cricket, Lovely Cricket. The empire of Great Britain's dominance over its colonies has long since subsided, including the loss of America. But throughout the world, Britain still holds an influence, consistently punching above its weight for a nation of its size. One example of this is through its invention of sporting games, and one in particular is that profound cultural, social, and political influences, much greater than a mere game, is cricket. The phrase, that's not cricket, has a global significance, meaning something in the hand, or crooked, and also something at the heart of Englishness, in terms of fair play and decency. Cricket is played predominantly in the former British colonies of Australia, New Zealand, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Sri Lanka, India, and of course, the West Indies. It's extraordinary how this bastion of Englishness took root in these alien lands, and not only was embraced, but also became a part of the fabric and culture of all of these test-playing nations. Each one of these colonies has given the game a new flourish and added to its rich history. And in England, cricket has helped break down class and social barriers. In the West Indies, cricket holds its own political and social significance, and is arguably the one single institution that bonds the region of separate countries together. Originally, following the introduction of the game to the West Indies in the 18th century, black players were only allowed to fetch the ball back from the cane fields beyond the boundary, before eventually being invited to join in. However, until the turn of the 20th century, only white players were allowed to represent the West Indies, as a collection of bankers, merchants, landowners, and noblemen took to the field under the region's banner. When black players did enter the team, they faced unofficial apartheid in terms of which positions they could play and which cricketing clubs they could join. Most significantly, the region's team was not allowed to have a black man as its captain and leader. Over time, within the Caribbean, it was felt black cricket captain would prove a true distinction of meritocracy. It would also reflect the growing calls for independence emanating from the Caribbean islands that wanted to determine their own future, as was championed since the 1930s by the first great West Indian player that was recognised, Larry Constantine, from Trinidad. So I hope that gives you a little context and set the scene as we move along from its origins. And our name, the West Indies, that belongs to Columbus, but our name comes from the Caribbean. It's the Caribs, it's the indigenous people. We didn't swim across to West Indies, we were taken there and captured and colonized from the empire. Obviously came a commonwealth and a sense of that community. In fact, we'll see those islands. There are very few. CARICOM we've got as an institution, a bit like the EU. Stay away from the controversy, just the context. We've got the West Indies University and the West Indian cricket team. Very, in terms of currency, and you think, say England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, getting a republic, bicker and squabble. You need to spend some time out in the Caribbean and find out about the squabbles that we have there. The West Indies cricket team is one of those few uniting forces that bonds us together as a region from all the long factors. So I'm going to use the term TTEA. It's from Bristol. We're at Clear Lake, from under the Marvin Rees administration, from the Deputy Lord Mayor as well, Asher Craig as well, the transatlantic trafficking of enslaved Africans. Can't get away from that. There's no point in me trying to sugarcoat or pretend that that's not what I do, not what I've ever done as well, because this is how I discovered. I talked about growing up here, talked about going to Lawrence Western School, 99% white. I had no idea of the things that had happened in the city. No idea that the city that I'd come to had a lot of its riches from the blood of my ancestors from that. That happened after I left school. Wonder I left school without any qualifications. I was pretty pissed off with my school life. Later on, through this education and turning to the books, I found out about that. So leaving here, leaving from sailing on through the River Raven, going out to Africa, as well, part of that transatlantic slave trade as part of that. And the Americas as part of that. Believe it or not, the Caribbean, as we know, was richer than North America. Through the War of Independence, Britain wasn't too bothered about losing it, because its wealth was all kept in islands of Jamaica and then Barbados, and once they put that there, its gold and its riches that it brought back to places like Bristol. From all of that, you're going to see this theme through that rebellion and resistance. The same rebellion and resistance that people like Viv Richards, when he come out with his red, green, and gold armband and swinging that bat that was there. The resistance. We've got great work that was done for people like the abolitionists from Wilberforce and others that are in the city as well. So that was there. But again, missing from the history books. Which is where I come in, was the rebellions that were in the Caribbean, from Bussa, from Kwamina, from the Choctaw in Haiti as well, Nanny Maroon as well. So the way we're taught history, this is why some of the issues that we say around that have come up following the murder of George Floyd on 25th of May 2020 are vital, and to say in terms of the true telling of history. And just a wider perspective. Not that we want to erase anything, we just want a wider things on the tableau and play. And so we have the city that I live in, city I'm proud to be in and be a part of as well. It's not as black and white, shall I say, because it's the city of Colston, but it's also the city of those abolitionists. People boycotted Hannah More and others who risked their lives for marking out what the slave trade actually was for years, documenting what that was in terms of the diseases that the ship was going, made it uneconomically viable in terms of making the case for that, and women boycotting sugar from that. So you have this, again, this dual narrative, this dual story that emerges from our great city that's there. But also the wealth that it created, Bristol Old Vic, Bristol Hippodrome, the Queen Square, Clifton, the whole range, Bath, outside that Bath, Stroud, all of those houses, all that money that went in, carried on all the way up through into Birmingham, the armaments that were there, Manchester, all those little towns that are around there. The heart of the Industrial Revolution, this was a part of, all from those little chain of islands known as the West Indies. Another adopted Bristolian, David Olusoga, discovered that in fact, when the Empire had closed the transatlantic slave trade, 1807, but it still carried on in the Caribbean. That brutality still continued in the Caribbean until 1833, when it was made through rebellions of that being uneconomically viable. And again, the fact that if you worked up until 2015, imagine the irony, me with prior enslaved blood in my veins has had to pay back that money back. We know that because the Treasury told us and tweeted out that said that helped to end the slave trade. Not quite true, but still, it was quite a fact. The fact that, you know, with enslaved blood in my veins, I'd help pay back through my wages, as many has. So ingenious money schemes can be made, and reparations can be found. Apart from, nothing went to anybody who looked like me. It went to those who already had big money already. People like Lloyd's Bank, Lloyd's Insurance, and they grew businesses. Wealth, good money goes to money. Money, as it does then, as it does now, as we continue to see. So that sets the context of where we are today, to bringing it to where I come into it, and movement of the people. As I said, we were so from slavery through to empire, through to colonialism, through to Commonwealth, and that Commonwealth Act that allowed us, as my parents, to come as free citizens here. The first ship, 492 people that came across from the Empire of Windrush. And we weren't alone. It's just a personal story and my personal say. I don't mean to put our story above any of our Asian cousins or from Africa as well, as part of that Commonwealth that isn't so common, because we all came over. We came to rebuild the motherland after World War II. We were invited guests. Our friend turned enemy, Enoch Powell, was out there, particularly out in India, recruiting. Later, before his he had a conversion to the dark side, and with his River of Blood speech, 14 days after Dr. Martin Luther King was killed, as well. Quite a consonance that you can make up in this era of Trump and Johnson. That's why I find history so much fascinating, rather than the EastEnders and Coronation Street. So. Exodus, movement of the people, the Bob Marley theme there starts. But when we got here, it was a different view for us. No Irish, no blacks, no dogs. We weren't the only people then who had been ostracised. People from Europe as well have got their tales. But home is home, and that's what we encounter, and that's what we overcome. My dad started at the London Underground, gave 32 years of his life. My mum did the traditional thing, working in the NHS, and then working in the what was then the post office, and then British Telecom as well. Went into those institutions and helped to grow them as well. Dad bought his house in London, and our social life is the third part of it. And that's the key part for today's talk. Today, because apart from when you've been refused from, as Paul Stevenson was, going into trying to get a drink, so we made our own shebeens and started our own cricket, becoming a key thing as well. There's another about cricket in the region. So. We come to 1950, 48 is Windrush and the famous Lord's Test as well, which is a monumental thing that took forward to, just to give you little test beforehand. So let's come to my second reading, which is the Lord's Test of 1950. In 1950, 2 years after Windrush's arrival in the UK, a West Indian team which would reflect the true diversity of the West Indies, including East Asians like Sonny Ramadin, arrived to play a test in England. The British had taken large numbers of Asians to the West Indies as indentured labour, particularly to Trinidad, my parents' homeland of Guyana, altering those nations' identities and lastly their politics. This groundbreaking test series was widely followed throughout the Caribbean and for the first time by West Indians in England. The plight and hardship of the migrants from the various islands created solidarity, and they now united under the West Indies cricket team flag. It's still a unifying force today. No more Trini, Jamaican, Bajan, Guyanese, or small islander. They are now West Indian, a fact they faced every day on the streets of the communities in which they lived. The West Indians won the series, inducing parties and jubilation of carnival proportions in the West Indies and for the first time in England. After the victorious West Indian team ever to win a match on English soil at Lord's, London, Clopsonians Lord Kitchener and Lord Beginner was said to have led a dance from the ground in St George's Wood to Trafalgar Square, followed by many spectators and revellers from both sides. The respect after the victory was new. If the West Indians could strategize, play to set fielding patterns, abide by moral codes of sponsorship, of sportsmanship, and show teamwork and leadership, then the migrants could be better respected and trusted in roles worth more than sweeping the floors. That's my father's first job. The West Indies had beaten the motherland at the home of the headquarters of cricket. Independence from Britain followed during the 50s, and after a long campaign led by the author C.R.L. James, Frank Worrell was finally granted the captaincy for the 1960 series against Australia. Due to his leadership, the United team representing diverse regions of the Caribbean would play exciting cricket around the world. After a narrow, entertaining defeat, his team were given a ticker-tape parade by thousands of their hosts in Melbourne, and the accolades continued when they arrived home. Worrell and his teammates, the legends Clyde Walcott and Everton Weekes, were collectively known as the 3 Ws, and also Garfield Sobers, would all be awarded knighthoods by the Queen. Together they set the template for a period of cricketing domination that was to last for nearly 20 years and helped forge West Indian identity and pride. Just as Jesse Owens had done in front of Hitler on the running track of Berlin at the 1936 Olympics, these sporting greats had reshaped the context of how a black man was perceived in the world, with ramifications far wider than the playing field, showing that sport was more than just a game. In the UK, a number of local cricket clubs were started as social sports struggles within black communities. One, the Bristol West Indies Club, later produced David Sid Lawrence, sadly he's not here today to hear this, who represented England at international level. Indeed, the children of these West Indian supporters may have failed Norman Tebbett's cricket test, but they would play major roles in an array of victorious British sporting teams, from cricket to football, and also help British success in athletics, boxing, and rugby union and world titles. It's my second piece of the context in terms of cricket. So, also within this story, also in the context of our talk, because we're here, we're in the cradle of it, we're in Bristol. As mentioned earlier, in a few days' time, I think it's next Thursday, we'll see this great fine building, which has held many great events. We'll host another one, and that's the funeral of Roy Hackett, seen in the middle there. Those 3 men not only changed the face of Bristol, but the nation, in terms of the Equalities Act that have all come through since after that. And they had lots of support from people like Tony Benn, what we now know as White Allies, and a lot of people from the university who marched. People let down in buses. I spoke to Roy, led in front of the buses, took a nap from a woman her name you know as Rosa Parks. This is why this stuff is far more than just a game, and obviously you have the support of things, and all that allowed Raghavir Singh, be the first black and Asian person to drive the bus. Started here in this city. On that day of 22nd of August 1963, the bus boycott ended, and that's the same day as I Have a Dream speech by the same person who given them inspiration, Dr. King from the Montgomery bus boycott, started in '55. So, when we talk about communities in Bristol and St. Paul's, and why it's a heartburn, this is replicated, whether it's Handsworth in Birmingham, whether it's Toxteth in Liverpool, Chapeltown in Leeds, and so on and so forth, because this is how our communities have come together. The same for our Asian communities as well. Things like Carnival have been produced, the leadership of Owen Henry, who Roy Hackett is a mentor for him in terms of bringing people together, because we have different islands, different ideas, as we do now. Anybody who's been in an activist force will know that there's the stuff that we don't always agree on everything, and you need unifying forces together. Things like United Housing Association were produced. The arts were important. Barbara Dettering was part of that actor as well. The famous Rose Green Cricket Cup, which many of we've had as part of that community. More than just social structures, but people can come together as well and bring their children as part of that, where we've seen the cricket games as well as our parties as well. People like the Bamboo Club, where black and white people came in their finest. Bob Marley played a gig there from back in the day. The plaque is still there within St. Paul's, and also where the state didn't provide, we clubbed together in terms of sickle cell, still the thing that is still ravaging through our communities and from black and Asian communities as well. And also people like myself through Seed. I was unemployed for 10 years. I've worked in those factories. I worked in the building. I didn't have a piece of paper to my name in terms of qualifications. And Seed was one of the organisations after the story that I'm going to tell you next in terms of the riots that took place, or rebellions, which I prefer in terms of that employment, Centre for Employment Development. I worked there, I took a traineeship for 18 years, worked with the City Council, rose from a trainee, gave me an opportunity, and without that I certainly wouldn't be here today as well. So that legacy is still there. From the statue right the way through to John Reed's statue, arts and activism, and murals that have taken place, and Roy still gives inspiration in more ways than one. We'll come to that story shortly. So, Empire and the Environment is our next one, and I'm going to read my special reading. This hasn't been published before, so this is something I'm sharing with you. From expeditions, erasure, extraction and exploitation to remembrance, reconciliation, research and reparative justice. Following the murder of George Floyd in May 2020, the question of how did we get here was raised yet again. Acts of violence based on skin colour did not begin or not end with men in blue police uniforms. The trauma of genocidal removals and transatlantic trafficking of enslaved Africans are still felt generations later. European superpowers waged war in lands that were not theirs. Decisions made by foreign bureaucrats, such as the 1947 partitioning of India, changed the lives of millions. Forests and fauna can be seen as benignly neutral when just disposed by human constructs, such as identity, war, or race. They can be viewed as items to be saved and protected from the natives. This admits that First Nation Indigenous people have been living in harmony with nature from our very beginnings. Practices such as living lightly on the land, eating plant-based diets, and sourcing medicinal cures from surroundings are conveniently forgotten until they reach Western laboratories. Just as ships sail with human cargo, the produce reaped by those enslaved or indentured people also travelled across oceans. Thousands of expeditions left European ports, beginning the systematic erasure of indigenous people. Next came the extraction of plants captured by plant hunters or botanists, providing a link in a chain of exploitation. In Britain, West and East Indian companies were established. Other private merchants formed to exploit Latin America, Spain, North Africa, France, and Africa, Portugal. even when smaller European nations, such as Netherlands, gained wealth and resources through the Dutch East India Company in Indonesia as well. In 1839, Britain went to war with China for the right to sell opium extracted from poppy plants, which still has repercussions in Hong Kong. The result of lands being interrupted by monoculture systems of agriculture in the Caribbean also has a costly colonial legacy. Instead of a flourishing ecosystem, lands cleared to support King Sugar have left the Caribbean region economically disadvantaged and its people burdened by expensive imported goods. In Africa, global corporations exploited its precious minerals, corrupting the governments and aggravating conflicts. In Western art galleries, this history hides in plain sight, and until recently has been contested. Ross Gray and Sheila Essay started the Architectural Review in January 2021. They said this: a plant that was brought to an institution such as Kew Gardens would be given a Latin name, and in the process, the local knowledge that existed about that plant would be extracted, and the source of that knowledge simply erased. By supplanting the local name, the world in which that plant existed also disappeared. In Britain, such understanding is rare. Rarer still is a recognition of the role played by Black and Indigenous people of colour communities and their historical links to the environment. From the humble but brutal beginnings of my parents' homeland of the Caribbean and South America, practices and rituals have been gathered for centuries, from working on plantations, cultivating sugarcane, and tending to animals. For the past 10 years, I've co-created projects that valued Black and Indigenous people of colour communities' heritage to the land. After all, who knows about these lands better than the Indigenous people raised on them in Asia, Africa, Australasia, and the Americas? Our projects include citizen journaling projects, community-based active research, two-way mentoring and internship. In addition, we are highlighting others' work outside of underrepresented groups, including Black to Nature, as you've seen, and Black Outside. Kean Mackenzie, a former colleague and Black and Green ambassador at Bristol's Ujima Radio, is now a writer and storyteller and PhD candidate. And she highlighted the story of Eurasia through remembrance in Elegy for Lignum Vitae. Lignum Vitae is a tree, and it's largely found in the Caribbean, but due to its durability, has found its way into a variety of objects, including crown balls and our lovely cricket balls. For Zakia, it is a flower of the country of her birth, Jamaica, where it is known as a tree of life, far removed from its Latin Eurocentric rebranding. The 55-nation Climate Vulnerable Forum advocated for countries in the global south facing the worst impacts of climate crisis, state that words are not enough. Acknowledging past atrocities can lead to reconciliation as one step towards understanding, repairing damage through using reparative justice models based on research of each region's needs. Climate change devastates BIPOC communities. On research visits to New Orleans, where I volunteer with low9.org, who are rebuilding homes post-Hurricane Katrina. I'm informed of Cancer Alley, that includes Louisiana air from industrial plants. In London, 9-year-old Ella Adu Kisi Deborah died from asthma due to excessive levels of air pollution. Her mother Rosamond has raised these issues that shorten the life expectancy of many BIPOC communities and low-income communities around the globe. Even in Bristol, there's a 10-year life expectancy between Clifton and Easton. Those are not two separate cities. It's only a few miles, but there's a 10-year life expectancy between the two. From this fresh view from the boundary, we can view the men of their times perpetuated the plunder in which Britain enjoyed great financial, political, and cultural success. So, back to intersecting, interspersing cricket and the environment. The two are interlinked in more ways than one, as we've outlined to you today. See, on the far side, that gentleman there's my grandfather. This is when I work with young people, particularly. They freak out. They've seen a black mason is something that is really, they thought part of the Illuminati. But I never met my grandfather. He died before I was born. Part of that, those are the institutions that were there. Sunday school, boys' brigade, church, times table, learning the English, all of that was there. So when we talk about empire, when I had the decision to take the medal or otherwise, like I say, it threw me like a stick of rock. My mother will tell you that she was British even though she wasn't born here. Just happened to be in a different system. It's only when they got here that something became different. My uncle went to set up what was the internet of its day. The phone lines came on in the West End. My two sisters came through there. So we're part of this story and narrative, and very proud to be there in a different way. But we went through things in a different way in that legacy. This isn't Victorian times. This is 1980. This is 2-3 miles down the road. This is St Paul's here in Bristol. 2nd of April, the first of the riots that followed after places like those places, Handsworth, Totters, that went up through to policing, talked about high unemployment rate. I wasn't alone during that period. 50% high unemployment rate. So really hard times, and crime and racism, National Front on the march then. It didn't seem that people were too bothered about that. It really strikes you when you wake up in the morning and you see Keep Britain White, and you don't feel part of this country. In fact, growing up, I was Afro Caribbean. I never called myself Black British. It wasn't something I even thought of through that period. It's something I've had to claim and earn because I've been forced to have a think about. But that's just my decision. That's I'm not going to tell you that everybody is either happy with the decisions I've made or whatever. I'm just talking from my point of view. Because when 13 people died, nothing said, and they looked like me, they were my age in a New Cross fire. That was something that still, I didn't need George Floyd to ever be reminded of that these things are occurring here, because that's what we grew up with as well. Nothing was said by the Queen, nothing was said by the Prime Minister of the day, Margaret Thatcher. They died within that fire. Still, the perpetrators go loose, and we've still continually Anthony Walker, Stephen Lawrence. On and on it goes. Martin Thomas here in this city at the Downs, and Sari quite a lot. So I don't have to, although I spend a lot of time in the US on research and with family, I know that this stuff exists here, and I have to carve out my own right from that. Alongside the violence and the struggle and the uprising, that we had a sense of identity and pride, and it came from number of external forces. I talked about Bob Marley earlier. He made his best album, but he made it here in the UK. He was in exile from having been shot in Jamaica. On that album, he talks about meeting with punks, The Clash, and much, much more. On the far right, we had something that really inspired me. A group called The Specials, who were living the life that I was actually going through. Today, a policeman comes to slap me in the teeth. Well, that happened to me. UB40, 1 in 10, in terms of being unemployed. We had, through music and rebellion, we had that uprising. Even again in this city, Black Roots, Talisman used to go into the Trinity, Dole Age specifically, talked about that. Living the songs, they were political struggles inspired by that, and especially the guy who, helped. Like Tony Benn previously, wrote the song Free Nelson Mandela. That's White Man, that's Jerry Dammers, the leader of that band, the Special, through that two-term movement. So again, not much as with the abolitionists many years beforehand. The thing around racism, not just in black and white to see, and especially we have a very unique representation here as well. Part of that was helping us in terms of our knowledge and our pride was the West Indian cricket team. Part of that pride and the arguments from Serena, and this might be one for well into the night, into the bar afterwards, about who is the greatest of all time. And I'm going to rule out Muhammad Ali and Serena simply because we're talking about team sports as well. You could put Brazil 1970 in. I'm sure you've got your own. But for me, the West Indian cricket team unbeaten and world champions during that period were the greatest of all time, the GOAT, as we say. And partly, and I'm saying this in an assessment, I mean this in all seriousness, we have to take into account the circumstances of where people are coming from. Whether it's Muhammad Ali in Louisville, Serena playing on tennis courts that were bullet holes in them as well. Brazil coming together as a team. West Indies with the meagre resources. We're talking about islands that are the size of some of our of Bishopston or Horfield or the like, very tiny places. Even our biggest island, Jamaica, is 3 million as such. Yet they came together for an undefeated a spell and gave that sense of pride. The players there, they knew what they were coming from, and you see that Fire in Babylon, which I've taken off the source material from today. They knew that they were coming to represent, and in doing so, the opening batsman, Malcolm Marshall, the four horsemen of the Crossman, Joe Garner, Colin Croft from Guyana, my country, Michael Holden, who's still gracing the commentary box with his views, and Andy Roberts as well, and the Master Blaster, Viv Richards as well. And that picture there, Clive Lloyd, again, we need a leader to harness that as well. And those times, we talk about the environmental times of now. Well, they were, so I've seen that as we walk through the sponsored booths, John Player Club. I can remember in Benson and Hedges, and that photograph there with David Lloyd and Fruit Engineer, the wicketkeeper, Zach Unity from Lancashire. In each club, though, they didn't just come in and just take the money and go out. Whether it was Sir Viv at Somerset with Ian Botham, inspiring other bowlers wherever they went, at Hampshire and other places. That's what they did. They just come in and just take the money when they were inspiring on and off the pitch, not only as individuals to me, but also other great cricketers. So I'm putting them up as go, and that's in terms of that inspiration. But then again, part of that journey, they were forged in fire, not only from some of those circumstances, but on sporting field, they were beaten and blooded as well. I had Lydian Thompson from 1975, as well as a lot of racist abuse as well. But they didn't come off the pitch as India did a year later. They fought back as well. That leadership, that harmony, one people, one nation, one destiny, Clive Lloyd's rallying cry of getting people together again. We're a bickering race of people. It's not easy to bring them all together, but you've got them to unify as well. The long hot summer of 1976, as you can see there, was we talk about our climate change. That was 350 years since you've had that, and Tony Gregg's grovelling phrase as well. Brixton and the Oval, and the carnivals that took place that's nearby. There were home places, and you saw that as a child, as I did through that time. When you went to the barbers, when you saw your dad happy, when you see your mum happy, and that unified that, and your uncles as well, and just that pep in their step, and they're just proud. They could face their bosses and their people in pride, and that's why it means far more than just a cricket game. And it unified the region during that period as well. As I said, remember the times of being swamped from those speeches from Thatch after Power had made that as well. The riots and rebellion that I've talked about as well. But we have that cultural imprint as well. And then think about the things that came out of that. So in those blues and shebeens, music was invented. Things like Lovers Rock, which was different from the sound of Jamaica. It had a bit soulful vibe, but just much slower vibe out of that. Those sound systems that you see, the film Babylon in 1980 that you see, the latest film from Steve McQueen has that there in terms of Lovers Rock as well. Rastafarianism took root as well, but that drum and bass again in this city, not far from here, literally short road walk there to the top of that, the home of drum and bass from Ronnie Size and Represent just started, but was here. So again, the city, our country, a lot to be proud of, a lot that we've brought to the nation along with many others. And then obviously got the Bristol Sound from Massive Attack and Paul Gazette, and even Banksy. Banksy's not painting Rembrandt. It's not something that he's taken from Rembrandt. It's black culture from Queens, queens from there, from people from the hip hop culture. A couple of them, African Mabata from Barbados, and Clive Miles from Jamaica as well, started that hip hop movement within that. So that generation merged together and was all part of that story as well for us and me. And it created more as well. The Butchers, Mark Butcher and Roland Butcher, the first people to play for England as well. Delvin Malcolm, born in Jamaica, but a proud English lion. One that got away, somebody represented on that very field there, and Andrew Simons, Australian cricketer, great cricketer, and sadly who died as well, but comes from Caribbean heritage before he was adopted and went to Australia. All of that is on the heritage and culture and the things that we're given. So when people say about, what we, go back home, or this is something that we've donated in blood and spirit and sweat all the way through there, and continue to through the culture and sport in so many ways. In culture, it still continues. There I talked about Lovers Rock, that's Janet Kay, Soul to Soul, politics, Linford again from in athletics, and much more, and other people who went on to represent England as well. Laurie Cut the 3 Degrees, Laurie Cunningham, Saul Regis, and Brendan Batson as well as continuing through the NHS, and people like Mallory Blackman as well, and Ben Zeff, of course, in that culture. So, the state of play, living on the environment, my penultimate part. Going back to the environment, a Caribbean island is quite literally been assaulted and wiped out. It's an unfair fight. You've then got to beat Mother Nature. This is 2007. This is Dominica as well. Before and after, and that's what I say when we talk about. For those of you who remember, we frame these things in terms of environmentalism. I've already said that who knows more about the land? We've been urbanized from being in the UK and the Americas and Europe and such. But who knows more about the land than us? And also, who's more affected by those conditions? And as we're seeing, and as I've seen, every year, hurricane versus the West Indies, Russell Down there, that's the scoreboard, devastated. Every year, we're in hurricane season now. It's a target of even more violent hurricanes. Yes, there's always been hurricanes through that, but they're getting more and more violent in that region. More and more devastation for those that don't even have it as well. My country is Guyana, and Guyana is actually the one that's English-speaking place in South America. And flying over that, as I did for the Brazil World Cup in 2014, you can see the devastation of that across the Amazon. Again, the lungs of the world being taken. We've got to put pressure on the Brazilian government through Bolsonaro of the deforestation and destruction that's taking place there. And kidding. In fact, there's a really good documentary on BBC Two at the moment I urge you to watch about the boys from Brazil. There, these things matter. What happens over there and that happens there. So, I put together this, 11 this lineup, and it's not. Trust me, it's not my favourite lineup by any stretch of the imagination. So this is like my cricketing lineup there. The deadly 11 to challenge our Earth, drought and water shortage. Even as I say, my visits to the Caribbean to see family, they can say they haven't seen rain for months, and that was even a few years ago. They're not getting, when they do get rain, as I say, they get floods. Food shortages will occur as we're seeing the erosion of soil, which I've touched upon. The COVID implications are still there in terms of finance. It's really devastated that community, particularly as I mentioned, with that soil erosion. It means that you have to turn to other means, and tourism is one of them. Places at the beach, which really annoys me, not being able to being used, but that thing on tourism, which has an impact on the environment. Again, with the monies that they're lost from that, they're turning to more and more along that lines. during the 70s and 80s. They got hit hard with some of the monetary funds that were put in place, and that, so they're still under that debt. Social unrest and war, as we've seen, the implications from Ukraine through Africa, which produces 30% of the grain and wheat for those Commonwealth countries I was talking about, as we've seen, in places. So I'm going to turn to Sri Lanka, being the latest of that, and a cricket playing nation. Migration from those places is harder to. You're going to see more of that. People leaving, and the impact of tourism, as I've spoken about, and that COP26 as well, which I'm going to come to, and the climate crisis in Pakistan just recently has even exacerbated that, with about 30% of the country underwater, I do believe. One of the things to do is what we're going to have more conversations. We're going to have more environments like this. I'm not going to say that anything I say that is I've got all the answers, or that you're going to take on board everything that I've said. That's not going to be the case. But we're going to have to start having some of these uncomfortable conversations amongst ourselves, amongst our friends, amongst our families, and amongst our politics, and particularly amongst our politicians as well. I wanted just to play a little bit from Henry Beckles, who puts it better than I can in terms of some of the conversations that we can have. This one's around that, restorative justice.
Vice University of the West Indies and Chairman of the CARICOM Reparations Commission, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, lamented the tragic nature of the slave trade as it relates to the exploitation of the slaves, which generated tremendous wealth for the exploiters. He says poverty, consistent racism, and underdevelopment are all living reminders of that dark era. In 2013, the CARICOM Reparations Commission was set up to seek redress for all these grievances.
What you're talking about is the unraveling of modernity, the crumbling of the structures that supported modernity, the white supremacy, the racism, the colonization, the
Can you lay all of that at the door?
All of that is breaking down to create a new frontier for the 21st century.
But can you lay all of that to the slave legacy, discriminatory policing practices?
That's the core of it. I mean, we have what happened in India with the destruction of the Indian 19th century industrial economy by Britain. What is happening all over Africa? What happened to the indigenous people of the New World? All of this is part of the same conversation.
On Sunday, August 1st, St. Lucia joined other former British colonies in celebrating.
Okay, so it's got a little clip of that, and just get a little sense of the type of conversations that reparations is on the table. And certainly they're different in different ways. I'm not saying that we all want a BMW tomorrow, but but part of that, as mentioned by the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, in an excellent speech, said that there's some 25 trillion been paid in terms of money printed in the last 18 months. 25 trillion. So these things, again, talk about, I'm going back to Theresa May, not the Windrush scandal on this occasion, but magic trees. They can be found. They were found for COVID to print money. We want a fraction of that to repair some of that justice, so people don't have to do those things on the left and come out so they can feed themselves in that way. We'll talk a little bit about the work that we continue to do through the Graph-Green programme. We talked about working with a man called Paul San, Green Citizen Journalism that we did. We're, as I said, we're burst another myth in terms of black people not being interested in the environment. So that when the evidence out there is far from is to the contrary within that. Lots of things that we've done over the years, and started with Nisha Bevan, who's in the audience today, the Black Seeds Network as well. We're looking at really researching, really promoting other people and getting them forward and getting their voice heard in a number of projects that continue to do with Xavier yesterday, and seen another 2 leaders to step forward providing education for the school. So this is something that is being discussed, and we are interested. It's just that we want it on our terms and discussions in terms of that. So my final point, again, mixing the 2 themes and intersecting them, things for the future. Bowling out historical racism is going to be difficult. Again, I couldn't stand up here and not ignore some of the issues that have happened with Rafiq and others. But we've known about those for ages. They whispered. I'm a London boy, not far from where I'm born. Hangray Cricket Club was a production line for cricketers. Mark Elaine, one of the greatest captains and leaders in the scene, and we led this great cricketing club, was a production line from that Haringey club as well. But that got stopped for some reason, and then was trying all these things. Good luck to Ebony, Rainford Bend and stuff, but that was there, and it was not nurtured. And I say, like a plant, these things need nurturing. For some reason, I wasn't nurtured. At the same time, turning up with the horns and our takeaways and our food, and suddenly it was like, no, we can't bring that in. So we stopped going and stopped loving the game, instead of that being transformed down to my parents. Because trust me, unless I wanted to be an orphan, I had 2 loves, 2 things I had to do: follow the West Indies, and I'll show you the other one at the end as well. But if you do the geography map, you'll come close to where I'm going to finish up today. So that love of the cricket didn't get passed down as much, as well as obviously the numbers game in terms of the people playing it, and through that migration through those barriers. And as I said, with Courtney Walsh, since he's not here today to talk about it, I'm sure he'll tell you about the inspiration again from someone else who led this great cricketing club in Courtney, and what he did to for the community as well. So those programs, the South Asian program, again, it may not be too late, but those barriers, those leaders have to be found once again, once more. And also in there for discussion is a cricket cartel, and that's England, that's Australia, and that's India. And I'm really concerned as a sports fan about the amount of cricket that's being played, and the monies that are made for those countries, and that not being trickling down into the other test playing nations. So that is my hour completed. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
So the floor is open to questions. Back there.
Thanks very much for the talk. At the beginning you said cricket's done a good job of kind of breaking down class, and I agree partially, but I don't think it's done as good a job as like football, which seems to be very classless, and professional teams and international teams seem to be much more diverse. Wonder why you think cricket seems to be lagging behind a little bit, and what needs to be done to actually make it classless, which I think we're behind other sports in.
Couple of answers to that one. You always see, I talk about sticky wickets there. You're always going to lose to football. You're going to lose to always, whether it's money income to the game with people watching it and playing, because it's an easy game to play. You need money to play cricket. You don't need money to play football so much. You can 2 coats, kick against the wall. Just back from Italy, saw people playing in the streets for the first time in years. I've seen that, like we used to. With cricket, here that's going to be that's unlikely. You need equipment. That ball's hard. You need to be kind of a part of the structure as well. So that grassroots program and making cricket fun, whether the 100 ball tournament is one of those things that have done that, is an argument for another day as part of that. But I think it has brought down, when it's been someone like Freddie Flintoff and saw what he's done with his pro, has broken down some of the barriers. But that's for the elite. What you're going to do to pick up the general people, to get people into the general game, and it's a long commitment. I used to play on a Saturday, and I haven't got a full day to play any longer. That's why comparing it to football, a couple of hours, it's just an easier game to play. Cricket has to sort out its individual, and it will be in its different regions. But, what will work in Bristol with the ACE programme, we talked about Stephanie Ebony Rainford Brent, I spoke about the South Asian programme. What they're saying is it's going to be different solutions in different areas, which is how you problem solve. Even within Bristol, there's going to be, Hartcliffe and Lawrence Weston and St Paul's and Lawrence Hill are 4 different areas, similar problems but need different interventions. So it's getting on the ground, investment with people who are working and taking time to nurture and grow that, like the seed. So.
Yes, that slide that you showed 11 points.
Yes.
That was from the 80s?
No, I made that today.
From when is that?
That's today. I wrote that.
That one.
Yeah.
Where is that from? On what page?
That is what I thought of 11. If I was writing who the world is, I could say the deadly 11 to challenge our Earth.
That is great, but it hasn't worked. Why?
Because I don't think we've done enough of things like what we're doing today, which is talking, and it's awareness. That's why I'm here today. That's why Zena and the team have invited me to speak.
Great stuff, but it hasn't worked.
Sure, I agree.
It's not an action plan, just to clarify that. That's more what's actually happened.
That's what we're facing today.
Yeah,
That's what we're facing right now. That's the things we're causing right now that are not currently working.
And I say sorry, I don't think I've talked about COP26 too much, but yeah, there were promises made and promises forgotten, and it's like I listened to. I mean, if you get a chance, I've put the speech there, but it's a brilliant 8-minute speech from the Prime Minister of Barbados, where the pace bowlers normally come from, but they're quite a fearsome open partnership, both in Barbados. But if you get a chance, do listen to that speech.
Just thinking about it. Thanks, great talk. West Indies not perhaps the cricket force it once was. People say that's partly because of people getting interested in American sports. I'm just wondering, are we just replicating a different form of imperialism just for America rather than Britain now? And what can we do to kind of resist some of that? Or that's a big question.
I think it's a myth on the American sport, because I could quite easily point to you the West Indies All-Stars who don't play for the Test team, who do very well in IPL cricket, and we've been producing good players for a while. We produced one that helped you win the World Cup, in Jofra Archer, 2 actually who were not playing. So we've got a good 3 teams. There was that period where. And those things go, as you know for yourself, England, Australia have seen it as well in peaks and troughs. I do believe that we are producing great players there, but we are talking the developing world in terms of what it needs to do, what it needs to be done. Can I take the second point again in terms of resisting imperialism from?
Well, just if I'm accepting that might not be true. You do hear that people are looking towards American sports and looking towards America as the next kind of.
I think they kind of always. If you go to Australia, it's the same thing. It's very. I've been to Australia a couple of times, but they look to Asia. But yeah, there are a lot of Americanisms there. I think that is that's what we have to do in terms of you're up against games, you're up against in terms of Mud has always been something that's been there. The capitalism is something that that has always been a part of. But at least the players are earning. So cricket has never been popular. Look at Kevin Peterson saying, "Oh, we're paying too much cricket," and then suddenly someone was writing him a check for it. Well, suddenly he was playing 24/7. I never forget that. Even he would laugh about that. And that's why I say about the West Indies All Stars, the Bravos and the Samis, who haven't represented West Indies for years, but earn a fortune, and quite rightly. They've got freedom of movement to do that. That's why I mentioned about the cricket cartels. That's one of my issues. When you've got the New Zealand, I think it's Bolt, who was pulled out of this contract because he can earn money from franchise cricket. And so that's the next tier down from the three big ones I mentioned: Australia, India, and England. And you've got so what we know that West Indies and Pakistan have been ostracised. I think they're bringing up their own game. But when you got to New Zealand runners up and world champions in the Test cricket, one of their players are pulling out. What happens then? I think we're at a Kerry Packer moment in sport. And Kerry Packer was right, by the way, in terms of the. That's what I say about money's always kind of be there to see administrators took it. I think we're at a moment now where something needs to be done about the amount of cricket and how that's structured, and to have a calendar that fits everybody. England's going to be okay, Australia's going to be okay, India's going to be okay, but the rest, I've got my doubts.
Given all these challenges we're facing, and who knows what we're going to face in the future, how important do you think cricket is in that context, and why? And can you see it being capable of playing any role in any sort of change?
I'll extrapolate cricket and replace it with sport. Sport is the most important thing of all the least important things in life. Look, we're here today. We're discussing it. It's an entry point into some of the issues about to get people to start thinking about some of the things. I'll declare an interest now in terms of Tottenham being my team. But we did a net zero event. At least it got people thinking about those issues. Again, which people just want to go to the game and come back and come out and whatever. Both of these two things come from my dad. I'd say it would be awful. Otherwise, it wasn't even a question about thinking about going to see Arsenal or England. It was West Indies or be adopted at 4 years of age.
Hi, I work for Gloucestershire, so we're obviously striving towards being more sustainable, and each cricket is vital for us. What would you like to see from us, the 18 counties, do to support and to be better at this? What can we do?
In terms of race or in terms of environment?
So let's say environment. Let's stick with environment now.
A lot more promotion of the issue around today's event, around what these issues are, some signage up and around things in the programme, social media, that type of engagement as well. I know you're doing your schools programme. I know that you're committed, and I know you're also on a journey with Catherine Davis as well as good support of yours. So I know that you're on that journey to doing that. But yeah, I mean, I've looked deliberately. I'm looking for signs of today's talk or something around the issues or the net zero. When you look at, I know those guys are big behemoth and will do it for their own reasons, but they're, whether it's racism or whether it's net zero, there's the regular messages that are coming out 24/7 after every advert. There it is around kick racism out of sport, and that is trickling down. That is having an effect around the discussions. We can argue about the reasons, but first of all, we've got to get it, that's what today is all about, is getting it on the front page in front of people. Well, that's not for not for me and not bothering. Our individual actions will have a concern. We'll change everything. We need those politicians to do that. We know that there's some far bigger things, as Maya said in the video, put forward. But it's the behaviour change. It's the mechanisms to assist and do that, supporting. I know this group needs a website to help promote that, and I know they're a fantastic group of volunteers, and they need support, and it does need, going back to the economic value. I'm all for having those conversations and making sure that there's more than just trickle down, that it just floods into those areas where it's needed.
I'm going to tag off that one. So, the Bristol Dodos are going to be working with the journalist who was here for the last session, Tanya Aldred, on trying to create the next test into an organisation and a hub for cricketers from the top of the game to the bottom of the game, small clubs, big clubs, across the nation, even across the world. We want cricket and cricket voice to be, to understand the climate issues in the game. It's part of this series, so we're using this series to springboard off that. So the next test is going to be coming up. We're hoping to start a net zero game. We need founding members. We need people who want to make things happen, who want to support a small organisation. Get recruited. Put your name on the list as you go out. It's a really interesting time. So we need sport to inspire a population to really move and act quickly on climate issues. So the next test is going to be the hub for the cricket community to do that. So yeah.
Can I just add to that? I think you're doing some great stuff here anyway. Will's come to talk to us before about your sustainability. You've hosted us free. That's brilliant. But they always start. Members of the club always start saying, we're new to this. We're not sure what we're doing, but we'd like to learn. Which one at A level I really, really like, because it's about that honesty and openness, about really what it takes to pay for it. But I'd like you to shout about it more. I wrote to Will and said, you could be the Forest Green Rovers of the cricket.
Yeah.
People know who they are, but I don't think you make enough of what you are doing. And I think some vision statements around we are a green club would be fantastic. That's my.
I think that's fair. You might be, I don't know, it might be easy to know. A month ago we announced that Benny Howell, who's one of our best players, is leaving. He's joining Hampshire, and that didn't go down well with fans of Gloucestershire. But the second message to that was, oh, don't worry, I'm sure they're going to announce a climate talk with Greta Thunberg to make up for it. And I kind of thought, it would just make me laugh, because I thought, well, there's nothing we can do about, players come and go. But actually, that member, that fan, has understood that we are doing something else.
Exactly.
Good.
So I do take your point. I think we should share.
Let's get Greta out on the lawn.
I don't see you getting away from that, because I don't see your headquarters are in Bristol. This is not it's a politically active city, all of its faults and wonderfulness. That's where it's not like if you don't, there's Somerset down the road if you want something a bit quieter. But this is where you're at, and I don't see that's going to change.
So should we have one more question? Hopefully from female, because we've had all mostly gentlemen voices. Any ladies, please? Non-male voices. Yes.
So we've still got the Flame Credit Austin statue was. Who would you put there?
I personally would like to have seen Paul Stevenson, but he's not on there, so Roy would be next one up for, or both of them, because of what it's, again, I'll reiterate, if you look in the history books, you see what happened with that Race Relations Act, you see that adopted by Equal Pay Act, you see that through the Disability Act, you see that through the Right to Marry, you see that something that fundamentally changed Britain. And I don't think we as a city shout enough about that. as well for the people who support them in terms of the white allyship about that. So I certainly do every minute I can.
Any more burning questions? Yes.
I just have one thought, which is that a lot of green space in the cities can often be attributed to like sports areas, and they don't actually themselves have a lot of biodiversity, but can quite often be spaces that people come and see and see lovely green grass and maybe get the wrong impression of what the natural world should look like. And I wonder what sports grounds are doing to actually offset the fact that they're doing this like monoculture of grass in the middle of the city, and what that influence has on people's like opinion of green spaces and what they should look like. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
It's my views in it.
Well, let's just try to think. I don't really know. I'm not quite sure. The Gloucesters, they've got working with the school, and you've got a little green area. We're not too far from an allotment, so it is a really good question, and it's also, it's one of those kind of balancing acts where how much joy do people get from playing, and how much joy we play on our club has spent most of our playing life on the Netham. And in the Netham, it's such a wonderful space. You can see all the trees on the edges, and as you go down, it is the canal that takes you out of Bristol. So it's a really good question. Things like that need to be brought up. They need to be brought up to the fore. And actually, at the end of all of these sessions, we found our audience really want to talk about this issue. People really want to talk about climate change. They want to talk about quality in Bristol. All these issues are coming up, and people want to come together and talk about them. There is an event here at the Gloucestershire County Ground where you will get a chance to have a People's Assembly. I think I'll pass over to
24th of September.
24th of
Saturday,
September.
3 o'clock.
3:30 or 3?
3 for 3:30.
3 o'clock here. There will be a People's Assembly, and that's a way to bring things that you want to bring to the fore and talk about, find solutions. It's a wonderful way of like a new democracy, where everybody gets a voice. We cover issues, and people go feeling like they've got a mission, something that they can go home with and do. So that might be really nice if you wanted to come for that. We don't have flyers, but I can send you a digital flyer if you want for that.
As you can see, I love to rotate the strike, so I dodge that banter, and Tina's better at dealing with those than I am.
Fantastic. Right, so we were talking about, you talked about Somerset earlier. Earlier this year, in May, a young 20-year-old South African player who was visiting our shores as an overseas professional, playing for North Petherton Cricket Club, was brutally attacked in Bridgewater and placed in an induced coma in the Southmead Hospital, just a stone's throw away from here. Today, he has actually undergone his last treatment. So the last in his operations, he's had a section of his skull replaced. So once again, this is a young black man visiting our shores, and he suffered a terrible attack. Now the cricket community came together. The cricket community did something quite amazing. They did a fundraiser. Things happened really quickly. The Somersets had been to the hospital to visit him, and they brought the family over from South Africa. So this is one story where everybody was talking about it, but there was something that wasn't being said. I'm sure that's got to do with obviously the police and the investigations and things like that. But on our nation, very, very close to Bristol, a young black man, a young black cricketer, was brutally attacked. So things like that they are real. They're really happening. They're really out there. So things like today, we want to inspire people to really, bring these things forward. Don't sit by. Don't be a bystander. And the same goes for racial issues, and the same goes for climate issues. We really need to start acting. So I'm going to do a few closing things. Our game And our nation is so obsessed by history that we forget we are part of history making. Our actions and our omissions will have consequences. Future generations will look back to us for inspiration, to navigate their world and know themselves better. It is said that history is written by the victors, but in all truth, history is nurtured, seeded, and made by ordinary souls, willing to do the right thing in a world gone wrong. Those who sacrifice there today for a better tomorrow. So as a legacy of this series, all this content will be available online, all the recordings for the talks, and obviously we want people to come around to the Next Test website. Please hurry round and sign up. We're recruiting volunteers, founding members to springboard the Next Test. We want to build a hub, so always need hands on deck. And we will be having a meeting for that in October, so please get in touch and sign up before then. Incredible, massive thanks to all of our speakers, so Roger Griffith today, and the amazing speakers throughout the series, and our partners, so Creative Connects and all others. Creative Connect, Basis, Rapid Transition Network, and the Next Test, and obviously huge thanks, and we are indebted to the Gloucestershire Club for giving us this space and really, showing their true colours that the club wants to be part of the solution. It's a long way to go. We've got lots of things to do, but with the spirit and the truth of Gloucestershire's, we can all feel proud that we live in a city where our cricket club really wants to act on the right side of history. So a huge hail to Will Brown, and a very special thanks to Neil Prescott, who's nurtured the series from a small seed into a flourishing reality. And mostly thank you to all of the audience who have come. It's really, really, we wouldn't be able to do this, so we're really happy to serve you all. We will close. So originally I asked one of the young dodo players to close with a poem. She got quite nervous, so we're giving the floor to an affiliate dodo to end on a poem. So thank you very much. Yes, thank you, Chris.
I was at a laughter workshop last night, which was a very bizarre thing to do. But there was a discussion about how even in the depths of despair, it's still possible to experience joy. And I was thinking about how cricket, like our wider society and our world in general, has very checkered and difficult and painful past, and an uncertain future. But for me and for everyone who loves cricket, it's a real source of joy, and I think it's important to hold on to the things that bring us joy, while still acknowledging our history and the many diverse challenges we're going to face in the future. I feel privileged to have been handed this poem by Zena, because I think it acknowledges the past, but it looks to the future with hope. And this is an excerpt from a Ben Okri poem called "Turn on Your Light." The new era is already here. Here the new time begins anew. The new era happens every day. Every day is a new world, a new calendar. All great moments, all great eras are just every moment, and every day writ large. Thousands of years of loving, failing, killing, creating, suppressing, oppressing, and thinking ought now to start to bear fruit.
to deliver their rich harvest? Will you be at the harvest, among the gatherers of new fruits? Then you must begin today to remake your mental and spiritual world and join the warriors and the celebrants of freedom, realizers of great dreams. You can't remake the world without remaking yourself. Each new era begins within. It is an inward event with unsuspected possibilities for inner liberation. We could use it to turn on our inward lights. We could use it to use even the dark and negative things positively. We could use the new era to clean our eyes, to see the world differently, to see ourselves more clearly. Only free people can make a free world. Infect the world with your light. Help fulfill the golden prophecies. Press forward the human genius. Our future is greater than our past.